Please turn back with me in your Bibles to Ezekiel chapter 34. In this chapter, Ezekiel is going to really get us to wrestle with the question of who is God? What is God really like? That's a really important question. What is God like? It'd be quite interesting, wouldn't it? Maybe if we went round the room, maybe some be quite different ideas, impressions about who God is. And the devil loves to get us to begin to doubt God, to begin to doubt his character, doesn't he? That's what he did in the Garden in Eden. God had given Adam and Eve this wonderful provision, this full garden, and just one tree not to eat of it. And the devil comes along, and see, the thing with the devil is he's powerful and he's clever, but he's not original. And the tactics he used in Eden are still tactics he uses today. He first got them to doubt God's word. Did God really say? Are you sure he said that? You sure that's what he meant? And he begins then to get them to doubt God's character completely. You will not surely die if you eat from the tree. God just knows that if you eat that tree, you'll become like God. So they're saying to him, God's actually holding stuff back from you. God's jealous of you. God's keeping you from fulfilling yourself and achieving all that you can achieve. He gets them to doubt God's goodness and God's character. And when they accept that lie about God, they begin. Sin comes in. The fall happens. So it's important for us to know who God is. And it's important for us to know what God is like, because we become like the God that we worship. So it's important that we know what God's character is. And in Ezekiel 34, he's reminding us of something that's fundamental, something central to God, that he has a shepherd's heart. He is showing us that he has a shepherd's heart. These words of Ezekiel must have been just so comforting for the people that he spoke to. In the previous chapter, though we didn't read it, the people's worlds just crumbled around their ears. The unthinkable has happened. News has reached Ezekiel. News has reached the captives in Babylon. Jerusalem, the city of God, has fallen. And Ezekiel had been ministering for some time, telling them that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. But it was ingrained in the people's psyche. Jerusalem is God's city. God lives there. God has miraculously saved the city in the past. He'll do so again. Jerusalem will not fall. God is in the midst of it. It's in the Psalms, isn't it? And now word gets to Ezekiel and the captives in Babylon. Jerusalem has fallen. The walls are destroyed. The city is burned with fire. The people are scattered. Many are slaughtered. Jerusalem has fallen. In the narrow sense of the word, Judgment Day had fallen. The judgment that God had promised had come. And the people's world had crumbled around their ears. Here they were, scattered in Babylon, God's city destroyed and reduced to wreckage. Amidst the confusion, amidst the broken hearts, amidst the awfulness of the situation, God sends Ezekiel with words of life, hope, and comfort. And the comfort they're to get is this: God says, I will be your shepherd. I will be your shepherd. God is not going to abandon them. In their darkest day, God is reassuring them, I am here. I will not abandon you. Though your sin has led to this catastrophe, I will not abandon you. As the hymn says, our sins, they are many, but God's mercy is more. Our sins, they are many, but God's mercy is more. And we're going to see that in this chapter. So just two headings for you today. We're going to see the God shepherd, and then we're going to see the good shepherd. The God shepherd and the good shepherd. First of all, the God shepherd. Chapter 34 begins with God telling Ezekiel to prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. So the first question we need to ask is, who are the shepherds of Israel? Does God have something against the farming community? And the answer to that is no. Shepherd here is a metaphor for the leaders of the people, particularly the kings. God is dealing with the royal line that had led the people, and he's referring to them as the shepherds of Israel. Out of the long line of kings that Israel had had, It's quite startling when you look back, and you can really say only 3 of them consistently led the people in the worship of God. Only 3. David, and we know even he wasn't perfect. Hezekiah and Josiah. Now even Solomon makes the list. Remember Solomon with his many wives? And what came with every wife? A foreign god. So Solomon actually brought the worship of these false gods back into Israel, into the heart of the palace. So out of this long line of kings, only 3 consistently led the people in the ways of God. And even they were flawed and sinful and broken. David, Hezekiah, and Josiah. And the Lord is surveying the kingship of the nation, and he is saying, they've not done what they were meant to do. They've not helped the weak. They've not helped the injured. They have not cared for the people. They have looked after themselves and not cared for others. They have not led in the way I wanted them to lead. And essentially he's saying the kingly line is going to end. There was going to be no more kings in the nation. And you see that in the story of the Bible. Ezra and Nehemiah, they lead the people back from Babylon, back to Jerusalem, but there's no king on the throne. There is no descendant of David on the throne. The last king is a slave, a prisoner in the courts of Babylon, and he'll die there. The line of kings is going to end. But God says, verse 11, if we can bring this up on the screen, verse 11, this is where it gets amazing. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. Imagine you're a captive in Babylon hearing that. You're far from home. Your world's crumbled around your ears. Jerusalem has fallen. You feel lost and confused. And God comes and he says, I myself will come. And I will search for my sheep. And I will look after them. When we stop and think about it, it's an amazing statement when we remember, who is it that said this? Go back to Ezekiel chapter 1. Remember the glorious vision Ezekiel had of the one seated upon the throne, far above even the angels that attended him, who dwelt in the storm clouds and light and lightning. The God that appeared to Ezekiel by the banks of the rivers, the God who says, I myself am going to come. And I myself am going to search for my people and look after them. The God who threw galaxies into space, the God who creates worlds, the God who holds the stars in their places, is the one who comes and he gets his hands dirty. He's humble enough to reach down to the lowest and to come to look for his sheep himself. If the earthly kings that he appointed wouldn't do it, he'll come and do it himself. There really is no other God like Yahweh. There is no other God who is both high and holy, who dwells in unapproachable light, before whom the angels have to veil their faces, and yet is willing to get down to the lowest place, to get down into the muck of humanity in order to raise us up. He is a God who searches for his sheep, and he's a God who looks after them. We can put our name into that. If we follow Jesus, you can put your name in there. I myself, God says, will come and search for, insert name here, and I will look after them. The reason we believe today is because he did come and search for us. And the last half of that verse is still a promise to you and to me, and I will look after you. In a world of coronavirus panics, and in a world of Brexit, in a world of all this uncertainty and what's going to happen, here is the promise of God to his people. I will look after you. I've searched for you. You are my sheep, and I will look after you. I am the shepherd who does not abandon his sheep. God's heart is the heart of a shepherd. And what jumped out at me in the next 5 verses, I think, in the next 5 verses, 12 times God says, I will. Who's going to do this? God is going to do this. He says, I will search for my sheep. I will rescue them. I will bring them out of the nations. I will pasture them. I will tend to them in good pastures. I will bind up the injured. I will look after the weak. I will shepherd the flock with justice. You'll see the next few verses, it's I will, I will, I will, I will. God is going to do this. He's going to get involved, he's going to shepherd, and he is going to rescue his sheep, protect his sheep, care for his sheep, look after the flock in whatever way they need. It's a reminder to us that even the best human leaders fall short. That's the trap we fall into, isn't it? Well, if we just elect this party instead of that party, if we just elect this prime minister instead of that prime minister, or this president instead of that president, if we just have the right people in place in government, then we'll enter into a utopia where there'll be no more food banks or potholes or anything like that. We just need to change the people at the top. Now, that's not saying there can't be improvements, but it's a reminder to us we can't invest the hope that we put into God onto people. The best leaders are still broken sinners with weaknesses and failings who get things wrong. The kings of Israel have got it wrong, so God himself is going to come and to shepherd and to lead his people. It's a wee bit insulting that we're called sheep in some ways, but it's true. I haven't worked that closely with them, but I know one thing about sheep is leave them to themselves, they can tend to get into a lot of trouble. Growing up in the islands, quite often you'd hear there's a sheep going off the edge of the cliff and was stuck, and the men in the village would have to come together to try and rescue this sheep. They can just get stuck on their back, not being able to get up. God is saying to us, we need a shepherd. Sheep need a shepherd or they will die. We need a shepherd or we will die. But God promises that he says, I myself will be your shepherd. I myself will look after you. I myself will care for you. I will be your shepherd. And a shepherd's job in the time that Ezekiel lived was much more dangerous than it tends to be in a croft or a farm round about here. Remember King David, who was a shepherd before he became king? And he goes to fight Goliath, and they say, you're just a boy. You can't go fight that giant. He's been killing people since he was a boy. He's been killing people. He's got a track record of violence and battle and war. Who are you? And David says, well, I've looked after my father's sheep. I've chased after lions and bears. He's a young boy. This was well before the days of health and safety and risk assessments. There's the young boy out in the sheep. What's David doing? Oh, he's just chasing a lion. You go fight the lion. He's a young boy, but he stood between the flock and predators. In those days, there's wolves, there's bears, there's lions. They come across a flock of sheep. They think it's lunchtime. And who's the only one who can stand between the predator and the sheep? It's the shepherd. The shepherd has to face off enemies. The shepherd has to chase down predators in order to protect the sheep. And God is saying, I will come and be your shepherd. I will come and be the warrior who protects you, the warrior who fights for you, the king who lays his life down for you. God says, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. We should be hearing a wee echo of Jesus there. Remember when Jesus said, the Son of Man came to seek and to save those who are lost. There's definitely more than a hint of Ezekiel chapter 34 in what Jesus says. God says, I myself will come and search for them. Jesus says, I have come to seek and to save the lost. So there's the promise of God. He himself will search for his sheep, and he himself will look after us. What does it mean then? If God is a shepherd, what does that look like? Well, verse 12. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he's with them, so will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from the places in which they've been scattered. Again, remember who he's speaking to. People who have been scattered because of their sins, scattered because of God's judgment on Jerusalem, and God's saying, I'm going to bring you home. When you look through the Bible, actually scattering seems to be a result of sin. In the Garden in Eden, Adam and Eve sin. What happens? They're scattered. They're pushed out. After the Tower of Babel, when God's judgment falls on the people, what happens? They're scattered all over the earth. When God's judgment falls on Jerusalem, the people are scattered And God is saying here, I will rescue you from where you've been scattered and I will bring you back. He's bringing blessing where there was curse. He's undoing the effects of sin. He's unraveling the effects of sin, the scattering, and he's bringing them back together. That's a shepherd's job, is to keep the flock together. As Jesus said, the man had 100 sheep. One went missing. He left the 99 and he went looking for the one, and he brings it back to be with the other 99. Shepherd's job was to keep the flock together. God is saying he's going to rescue his sheep. God is saying he's going to protect them from predators. He's going to be there to keep them safe, protect them from danger. Verse 15, he says he will tend his sheep and make them lie down. It's a picture of peace, safety, and protection. Verse 16, he says he will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. God shows us that he's a gentle shepherd. He's a good shepherd. As it says in Isaiah, a bruised reed he does not break, a smoking flax he doesn't quench. There are times, aren't there, where we feel like that injured sheep, wounded, hurt, fragile, disoriented, that we've been through the mill. God says, I will bind up the injured and I'll strengthen the weak. He is a gentle, good shepherd who will tend to your wounds, who will bind up your broken heart, and who will help you heal. So God is speaking good news to the people. There is a shepherd. There is a shepherd who would look after them. There's a shepherd who would care for them, and it's God himself. And he says the same to us today as well. Don't be afraid. Take courage and strength from the words of God that he will be our shepherd and he will look after us. God himself will search for his sheep. There is no such thing as a sheep he doesn't care about. There is no such thing as a sheep that escapes his attention. He sees you. He knows your thoughts, your anxieties, your fears, your worries, your cares, your pains. You're his sheep and he loves you. And he has committed himself to you and he will not abandon you. He will look after you. He himself will come. He himself will shepherd and he himself will look after. The God shepherd. But secondly, we see also the good shepherd. If we jump to verse 23. If we bear in mind what we've seen about Ezekiel 34 so far, this verse should sound a wee bit strange. He says, I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them. He will tend them and be their shepherd. I, the Lord their God, will be their prince, and my servant David will be prince among them. Now this is both a contradiction and an impossibility. Remember verse 11, God says, I myself will shepherd them. Here in verse 23, he says, I will place over them a shepherd, my servant David, and he will be their shepherd. So which is it? Is God going to be the shepherd, or is this servant that he places over the people going to be a shepherd? Which one? It seems to be a contradiction. And it's also an impossibility. Who's his servant David? King David has been dead for many, many years. So there's no way that David himself can be the king. David himself can be the shepherd. You might think, well, a king of the line of David, well, God has just said at the beginning of the chapter, I am against your kings and rulers. There is no king in Israel. So who is the servant David is the question. And is it God who's going to be the shepherd, or is it this servant David who's going to be the shepherd? These are the questions that Ezekiel's wanting to put into our mind. Which of these is it going to be? Is it God, or is it this person? Ezekiel's leading us to Jesus, isn't he? Because there's only one person who makes sense of this. One person who can be both the servant of the line of David, a king from the line of David, and be God. And it's Jesus Christ. Ezekiel is pointing us to Jesus, who is God in the flesh, who is descended from David, who sums up this verse in his own person. Jesus is going to be the shepherd of the sheep. The Lord is our shepherd. And this is, I think, what Jesus intends to have in our minds when we read John chapter 10. When Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, this is what he's talking about. And the people Jesus spoke to at the time, they understood this, because when you read John chapter 10, you read about Jesus saying these beautiful things about laying his life down for his sheep. How do the people react? It says, they thought he was mad and said he was demon-possessed. Why do they react that way? Because they hear what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, you know the one God promised in Ezekiel chapter 34? It's me. I am the good shepherd. Jesus is saying, I am the king. I am the rightful king of Israel. He is saying he is God come in the flesh to shepherd the people. When Jesus said, I am the good shepherd, he is saying, I am fulfilling everything Ezekiel 34 is pointing to. Jesus has come to be the shepherd of the sheep. Jesus doesn't just say he's the good shepherd, but he proves it. Remember how a shepherd had to come between the sheep and the predators. Jesus has to come between us and the anger of God and sin. And he does that. John chapter 10, he says that. I lay my life down for my sheep. Greater love is no one than this, that a man lays down his life for his friends. You read in Psalm 22 of this insight into Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, and there's a verse there that has him surrounded by wild animals. The bulls of Bashan surround me, wild dogs encircle me. It's this image of the shepherd almost being thrown to the wild animals, being thrown and devoured by the predators. Jesus puts his body between endangering us and the flock. He is the good shepherd who lays his life down for his sheep. On the cross, the good shepherd has our sin laid on him. God's anger on our sin poured out upon the good shepherd. Why? So his sheep can be saved. So you and I can have eternal life. So you and I can be brought into the fold. That's a shepherd we can trust, isn't it? That's a shepherd we can rely on in everything. The shepherd who would go to a cross for us is a shepherd we can trust with everything else. Ezekiel 34 points us to the God shepherd. He leads us to the good shepherd. But we need to ask the next question is, okay, that's fine, and hopefully we understand a wee bit about Ezekiel 34 and John 10, but what does that really mean for you and me? We need to root this and anchor this in our lives. What implications does this have for us? Well, let me say 3 or 4 things as to what implications this has for us. First of all, if Jesus is our shepherd, that means he's in charge. Remember what a shepherd was? The shepherd was a metaphor for a king, for a ruler, for a leader. My sheep hear my voice, Jesus said, and they what? They follow me. He's leading, the sheep follow. So if Jesus is our shepherd, what we're saying is he is our king and he is our leader, and that challenges our view on authority, doesn't it? One writer said recently, well, we have a problem with authority in the present day. We elect leaders and we hate them, then we elect some others and we hate them as well. We all think our boss is an idiot. It's funny that, isn't it? Anyone who makes decisions, we think, what are they playing at? What are they thinking? I could do a better job than that. We live in a society that basically has very little regard for authority. But to have Jesus as our shepherd is going to challenge us on that. Because there's that little lie, that little voice that lurks in your heart and mind that says this: no one tells me what to do. You're not the boss of me. I'll decide. And that's the very essence of sin. That takes us all the way back to the Garden in Eden and the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and good and evil. That was the choice they had. Would they learn wisdom by doing what God said? Or would they decide the best way? Would they decide what was right and wrong and go their way? That sin, that lie still lurks in our hearts that we'll decide. But if Jesus is our shepherd, it challenges that. It shakes that. Sin says we'll be God and decide right from wrong. But if Jesus is our shepherd, it means he is our authority. He has the ultimate control. Not what governments say, not what parents say, not what others say. It's about what Jesus says. We don't get to decide what's right. We don't get to live our life however we want. When we make Jesus our shepherd, we're committing to say, you're in charge. As Jesus himself said, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. That's not just saying they become Christians. That's talking about a way of life. That if Jesus speaks, we hear him, we follow him, because Jesus says it. So what's our attitude to authority, and what's our attitude to the Word of God? Where do we hear the voice of Jesus speak? We hear it in the Bible. My sheep, Jesus says, hear my voice, and they follow me. It's a radical shift in thinking Jesus is in charge, and we're called to follow him. It shows us as well the importance of Christian community. If Jesus is a shepherd and we are his sheep, the sheep need a flock. A sheep left on its own soon gets into trouble. And it's the same for you and I. Because the Bible says our hearts, my heart, your heart, is deceitful and wicked above all other things. It'll deceive us. And that's why we need God's Word, and that's why we need one another to speak truth into our lives, to keep us on the straight and narrow, to keep us from wandering away, because we will. And there's a lie out there that says, well, it's just me and the Lord, and that's all I need, and I can just go my way, and that'll be fine. If you're thinking like that, you're already deceived by sin, and you're already on the way to disaster. Because God makes very clear in his Word, we need one another. And we need to allow people and one another to speak truth into each other's lives. To warn one another lest we be hardened and deceived by sin. Our heart is deceitful and wicked above all other things. We need to place ourselves under Jesus' authority. We need Christian community. And lastly, it's a call to trust. If Jesus is our shepherd, the good shepherd who died for us, he wants us to know we can trust him. We can trust him. Sometimes we hold back because deep down, deep down, that our hearts say, I'm not sure he's going to lead me the way I want to go. We actually begin to doubt that he's good. We begin to think that our way is better. So if Jesus is our shepherd, it's a call to wholeheartedly throw ourselves on him and trust him. Lord, will you lead, I'll follow. Will you speak, I will hear and I will obey. We trust him. We hear him. That's one of the big shifts in having the new heart. At the end of Ezekiel 33, one of God's rebukes for the people is that they used to love listening to Ezekiel. If you look back at Ezekiel 33, from verse 30, at the very end, I'm paraphrasing here, but God says, your countrymen Ezekiel are talking about you. They're saying, come and listen to Ezekiel, come and hear the message, come and hear what he's got to say. They're listening to you, they're talking about it, but they're not listening, they're not obeying. Verse 32 says, you are nothing more to them than one who sings love songs with a beautiful voice and plays an instrument well, for they hear your words and do not put them into practice. We hear his voice, we follow him, we put ourselves into Christian community, and we can trust him. I know that's easy to say, but it's not so easy when things get difficult, is it? One of the writers was saying, there must be times in a sheep's life it wonders what the shepherd's doing. Remember as a kid going to the fank, watching the sheep getting dipped. Looks quite brutal. Doesn't look like a pleasant experience, but it's for the good of the sheep. It's to keep them from having the pests and diseases and parasites. It's necessary. But the sheep doesn't understand what it's going through. Shearing looks absolutely terrifying for the sheep at times, the way that how roughly it's been handled, doesn't it? But all the time the shepherd is looking after the sheep. The shepherd is working for the good of the sheep. Though there's times the sheep don't understand what's happening and why. They just know this is scary, this is sore, this feels so rough. That's where we remember who Jesus is. He is good. He is the Lord who is our shepherd, that we shall not be in want, and we can trust him. And if you're not a Christian here today, there's a call for you as well. There's an invitation to you that if you will come and bow your knee to Jesus, if you will come and invite him in to be your shepherd, he will. Because the reality is, if you and I try and keep the reins of our life and try and keep charge of our life, we're going to make a train wreck of it. But when we give Jesus charge, and we make Jesus our shepherd, and we follow him, that's where we find the green pastures, the still waters. That's where we find soul-refreshing joy and peace when Jesus is at the helm. Will you make him your shepherd? He is the shepherd. We are the sheep. And he's promised to look after us. Amen.